welcome to the Football 360 show. I am your host, JP Rock. He is Matt Bierman, as usual. How you doing, Matt?
I'm here and I'm doing great.
You're not frozen. I'm not frozen. We made it.
Feels nice and warm in here.
Feels balmy in here compared to outside, even just the parking lot. But we've been frozen for what, 2-3 days now?
Yeah, our poor heater cannot keep up at our facility.
I'm telling you.
It is. It's not good.
It's definitely testing things, but at least, we do have that. A bunch of people around there, I heard, were without electricity for a little bit. And hopefully everybody's safe. The roads were really bad early this morning. In fact, just recently, we're starting a little bit late today because further north and west, there's still a little bit of problems on the overpasses that are up high in the air. But great to be with you, as usual. Special thanks to our sponsor, Wendy's in Chesterfield, Missouri, who have been with us from the start. So special shout out to them. Appreciate that. Known for their pizza, wings, and live entertainment. Family owned and operated. Thanks to Wendy's. So lots of great stuff going on football-wise, mostly off-season stuff. Unless you're watching some of the NFL stuff. I don't know how much of the NFL you got a chance to see.
I got to watch some. I was
a little bit. I know it's busy season at Elite.
I had to work yesterday during the second game, but the afternoon game started. I got to watch about 30 minutes and watch Josh Allen rip off a long run, and then had to go work and check the score when I got done.
It's interesting like that because you'll duck into the office and you'll catch a little bit of game. Games are all on, and you'll catch a little bit of game, and then you got to duck back out.
Yeah, it's that time of year. It's I guess the good and the bad of it is if you enjoyed coaching football, it's a really good thing, and I do enjoy it. So usually my 7 days a week, I'm coaching and training, and they have a bunch of other guys that do it too. Yep. So
Matt Bierman of Elite Football Academy, Elite Performance. Yep. What other elite?
That's it.
That's it.
And we have the Elite Football Combine, and
Elite Football Combine, Boom 7-on-7.
Yeah.
Head football coach, Junior Longhorns, is it?
Yep. The Junior Long. I got one more year with that title, and then that'll be my 10th or 12th year of doing middle school football, and I think that'll probably be it.
Right. Of course, those who don't know me, if you're tuning in for the first time, JP Rock, media personality, publisher of various prep, Mizzou sites, football sites, NCAA-approved scout, director of scouting, flyover scouting, you name it, media, Fox Sports Midwest, recruiting analyst, pretty much done it all.
You know what? You just touched on the NCAA certified scout, right? And I think we've kind of talked a little bit about like what scouting services are and recruiting services, but you are a certified scout, which for the people, what does that mean?
What it means is that you have the ability to sell your information that you collect, your knowledge, to colleges.
Yep.
With the approval of the NCAA.
And they monitor that, and
they monitor that. They approve
year,
everything that you do. You have to do things a certain way. You have to have so many reports each year, or you can just do things strictly video wise, which is a whole lot of other different work.
Yeah.
But it keeps it approved. The recruiting services, our fan services, is where I think you're differentiating between the two, which are the guys who are more reporters, who want to write stories on guys. Although there's some that are fan services who also do get the NCAA approval. I've seen.
Yeah,
and so there's that, but there is a difference.
Then you have you also have
difference.
There's a huge difference.
Because I mean the NCAA has access to your site. They monitor everything you do and everything you go, and you can't sell to parents. Like you can't, like there are people out there who try to sell, I will help your kid get a scholarship. So you can't be like, I'll help your kid get a scholarship, give me money. And you can't also be like, hey, guy. Michigan, give me money. I'll put you together with this. I mean, you're double dipping. Basically.
Yeah. And there's, the number of times I have parents, reach out to me or we meet them later in the process and they say, one, like, hey, I wish I would have known about this sooner. And, I already bought a package with XYZ company that's going to take us through the recruiting cycle. And, the tough thing is with the paid services, because if it's a recruiting service, it's paid for by the family. Information goes free to the schools. But with the recruiting service, it is paid for by the schools and free to the kids.
And who do you think has more money?
Right. And who do you think value? I mean, certainly the schools value that data they buy a whole lot more than the stuff they get for free.
From reputable people.
Right.
Who they know have the knowledge. And the unfortunate thing is there's a lot of places that I see popping up recently who are, I'm going to market your athlete. I'm going to market this kid or they're this. And I mean, there's some that, and this was years ago, the last time I really checked, but there was one outfit that was charging people like $4,000, $4,000 with the promise that we'll find them a scholarship. And so I always tell parents, I'm like, if your kid is scholarship material, right? You don't need to pay a dime. Right.
No.
You don't, because they will be found. And I know that parents want to do what's best for their children. They want to do anything to help. But, I've seen people really rack up some debt, whether it's through services trying to help get their kid a scholarship, or whether it's taking them various places, taking them to like 20, 30 camps.
Well,
and it's like,
you can
save your time.
You can add 7-on-7 to that as well. So we're involved in 7-on-7. We keep it really, I would say, affordable, in the grand scheme of how it works. But, I was talking to a parent the other day, and the guy did the math. He's like, hey, I have a team that wants us to play. It's like $1,000 to play. And they're going to go 9 or 10 tournaments this between January and let's call it the end of April.
Right.
Well, the problem is when you do that, you start thinking, just to travel a simple distance, like from St. Louis to Kansas City or St. Louis to Nashville, $500 a trip, depending on how big your family is, how many days you're there. Well, the problem is if you're doing all of that, unfortunately, like you could spend $10,000, $8,000 in the off season for something that quite honestly is not developing you to the full scale that you could be developed to. And unfortunately, I guess I'm pretty practical when it comes to, like, if you really are a guy that has some talent, you want to hone your talent. Competition is a good way to hone it. But if you realize that you have inefficiencies or deficiencies in your game, then you have to spend time to address those. Playing a game, whether it's any sport, is not how you address getting better at given skills, right? You might be getting better at play management, right? But if your feet aren't good and your eyes aren't good or your technique isn't good, it doesn't magically get better by playing more games. It actually gets worse because your body starts to assimilate and take those skills into account, and that's the way it does it.
Right. So, you can tweak it playing games, but you're not going to improve upon it. You improve upon it in the off season.
Yeah.
That's really where you get better. And this time of year is where everybody should be getting better. And 7-on-7 is I consider it an add-on.
Yeah, it is. It's an accoutrement, right? It's an add-on.
That's a nice word. Look at that 10-step word.
A football coach, I got big words too.
Look at that.
But yeah, it's an add-on, right? And it's one of those things that if you're training and developing, then you're using that as the proving ground for what you're doing right now.
Right.
If you're just doing 7-on-7 by itself, you got a problem, because that is not going to help you get to where you want to go, right? And so because it's just there's not enough time. And even the practices are good because you're competing with other guys. But to me, the cost and what we were talking about, the overall cost far outweighs, if you're spending $8,000 in an off season or $5,000, that's a private school education or a first year's payment for college, right?
And unfortunately, I've run across a bunch of kids this year who have done it in the past, and it's like, well, my parents just can't afford it this year. Well, and I totally understand that.
100%.
And if you're going to do it, you want to find something that's reasonable, affordable, like anything else.
Well, and you said, like, you'll see someone that goes to 15, 20 camps in the summer, and you start adding up the bills.
Yeah.
Of what you spent on that, and then what your return on investment is going to be. And it's pretty minimal. And we talked about this. If you're going to a bunch of camps and you're not getting the love or the attention you need, you might be getting a message from the coaches that you need to listen to, right? There's something that's clearly missing in your game. that they're not excited about, right?
Correct.
So that's where it becomes ultra critical. And I think this summer is going to be more critical than any other summer in years past because the game has changed. They don't want to recruit high school kids if they don't have to. Yeah, they will recruit high school kids.
They want developed high school,
but they
kids.
Want guys that are ready to go,
ready made.
I spoke to a SEC offensive coordinator yesterday. Okay, he was talking to me about a couple kids, and really good conversation. And they are going to take a high school guy at this position, right, as a quarterback. And
are they going to take two?
I don't know, and that's the thing. Is
did you talk about that at all?
No, we touched around it, so okay. I don't know that's been decided what they're gonna do.
Well, with the portal, that makes it a more difficult decision for them.
Exactly, because then you're taking two spots versus you have the one, and so it gets really really technical with a lot of that. So, again, that's where you should be as a player. Especially if you have at that level and you're getting offers at that level, you need to be communicating as to what timelines are, what they really want. And, and again, it goes both ways because if you start getting a bunch of offers, they know they have to compete more for you as a college, right? So that it's kind of a double-edged sword. But if, say, you don't get a bunch of those offers and now you have two or three and you're not getting a bunch of other offers and a bunch of other attention, you might want to start thinking about like, hey, what's the timeline? What are we doing? Because you don't want a guy coming from the portal, a grad transfer guy that they didn't know about that comes available, just taking that spot, right? And that it can happen.
Well, it happens. It happened to a local team here.
Yeah.
Last year.
Yeah. And it happens
and
right off.
They're gone. They're back in the portal again.
Yeah. So
off to the races. But yeah, back to your point, what you were talking about is you want to be as ready-made as possible for when the time comes, when the school has you there. And everybody's wanting you to camp with them now. It used to be schools would come up, they'd come to your school, they'd talk to your coach, they might look at a little film, they might accidentally bump into you in the hallway, and they would make a decision based on that. How they look, if they were able, in an instance, they were able to shake your hand, walk around you, take a good look. See how you throw, take a picture, see how you throw the ball out on your high school field. And they could make a decision then, yay or nay. Now they want you in person at their school, just the whole works. Yeah. And not just for photos, because a lot of guys get that.
Yeah. Well, we talked about, the NCAA did away with that, which I think is awesome. You can only do photos except on a official visit. I love that rule.
I'm still seeing some photos out there.
Oh, well, maybe they're just pirated photos, right?
Maybe. They're just walking by a photo booth, like at a wedding.
Yeah.
They're just walking. There just happens to be one on. Hey, there's this booth out in the hallway. You got to take a look.
Dress up
pretty good.
Your favorite uniform.
Yeah, your favorite uniform. That just happens to be ours.
So, and I the whole recruiting game, right? If this is what you'll get involved in, and you want to be a college football player, you just have to start asking questions of the colleges. You have to start asking questions of your high school coach to see what their involvement's going to be. Again, my experience is a lot of high school coaches are really good at helping with the process. Some guys are maybe stretched too thin, and that's maybe not their expertise.
Some don't care as much as they should.
Some don't care at all, right? And
that's true.
And that's just the way it works. And unfortunately, sometimes kids have this false pretense that they think it's just going to happen all at the end of the senior year. And the truth be told is it starts happening your sophomore year or freshman year, depending on when you start playing varsity football. And then, it should be starting to wrap and, come to a close if you're a high level guy, junior year, right? And then if it's going to be, if you're going to probably go to a different level than the FBS level, it may, happen into your senior year, later in your senior year. And that's usually a sign. It does not mean that it's not going to happen, but it's usually just kind of the way the timing works. So,
well, that's a really good point. And that's something I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about this a little bit. I see guys not taking advantage of the opportunities. And you're right. I hear a lot from parents. When is the right time to start? The right time to start focusing on getting your child ready to be a Division I athlete, or the possibility of being a Division I athlete, is as soon as possible. 8th grade going into 9th grade, right? That between there, definitely your freshman and sophomore year, you want to be working hard. You want to be training. You want to be developing skills. You want to be doing the work, the research, everything that you need to do, schools that you like, places you want to go, camps, as well as training and other things that we were just talking about here. I see guys wait too late. I see guys I have guys now who are seniors who are reaching out to me. That's too late, guys.
Way too late.
It's just way too late. You need to start thinking about that because, and a lot of guys do it academically too. They will blow off their freshman and sophomore years academically and then start worrying about it. Now, it's not as difficult now as it used to be, but you can't wait. You can't wait between your junior and senior, even like you were saying, and think, okay, now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to do what I need to do to be a D1 recruit or a college recruit, period.
Well, yeah. This is going to sound crazy, but if you have those aspirations for any sport, right? I always say football's the one game you can start playing late if you're a freakish athlete. Okay, because there's always a place for freakish athletes that are abnormally large.
That's true.
But that's a compelling argument for the college because you're something that they can't find easily. The vast majority of football players do not fall into that realm. They're just like the other guys playing the game. So, when does that process start? I would argue that the process to become a Division I athlete or a high-level college athlete starts when you're a young athlete, depending on what sport you play, but play a variety of a lot. The typical sports played by those guys are soccer when they're younger, right? I know it's a dirty word with a lot of people because they don't like soccer, but it is a great developer of athletics and just overall athleticism. Basketball is a good one, right? Lacrosse is a really good one. And then obviously the track and field, the sprinting,
right.
Baseball's got some crossover, not a ton. But those guys and learning how to compete and learning how to be a good athlete are really good things that are a springboard for athletes as they get older.
Yeah. And I know you're not going to not play any sports ever and then come in your senior year and earn a football scholarship.
Right. It doesn't work that way.
Right,
you just have to be a really good athlete. Right. And so how do you
have to
do
have
that?
some kind of athletic ability.
And so I would argue with just the sports alone is not enough. So you need to be working on your movement mechanics and how you control your body. All those little things. I mean, we beat this drum constantly, but at the end of the day, they are going to value your overall athleticism.
Right.
The said coordinator I was talking to, he made a comment about quarterbacks needing to be able to run more so at his level in the SEC more than ever, and be able to not just escapability, but the ability to actually run, not necessarily have to run because they're going to run you 30 times a game like a running back, but they're going to run you in down and distance scenarios that make sense, and then you can utilize your athleticism. So, the better the athlete you are, the more opportunity you have. But that starts in youth athletics. In middle school, you start to get a little bit more serious about it. When do you start to have to play football? You don't have to play football super early, but once you're in the game, you need to be ready to go. Right? I would argue quarterbacks have to start much earlier because it is a unique group position, and you do need time.
A lot more learning to be done there.
You need time behind the line and just live reps. And then obviously throwing mechanics are a huge component of that as well. But to think you're just going to just magically get it your senior year is just a fallacy. To think you're going to just magically get faster after you're 16 and you decide to get serious about running, it doesn't happen. It does not happen. So the lifting and the weights, the running, all those things have a phase, right? So if you think of it like in phases, so when you're little guys, they're learning how to just learn balance, coordination, right? When they're little elementary age guys, they start to learn rudimentary skills of movement, right? Once they start to learn and acquire those skills, then you start getting to a little bit more skill acquisition. So they start to learn to play sports, but they're not at a high level skill acquisition yet. Might be high level for their age, but not in grand scheme of the game. And then as they start to get into more advanced movement techniques, like in middle school, right? And then that bleeds into, they get into high school, and that starts to 14, 15, 16, more into strength, right? Components. And once you get through that phase, there's an additional skills, training windows that you can start to really acquire and learn and then put it together with the game. But if you don't spend time, learning how to learn and learning how to be coached, it's going to pass you by because, being 15, 16, 17, 18 and deciding this is what you're going to do, is great, but you better have underlying skill sets and behaviors that are going to support it.
Right. Yeah. Youth sports is very helpful. Like you said, just the movement and all that. But at the same time, I see a lot of guys who really take off through the youth sports, through middle school, through even their freshman, sophomore years. And guess what? Some people peak their sophomore year. So
you mean the best kids in middle school aren't the best kids in high school?
They're not the best freshmen, aren't necessarily college players. In fact, there are guys who will do really well as freshmen or sophomores, and they'll get all of a sudden they'll become a 5-star this or that by fan services, and somehow they don't seem to make it, and people are shocked.
So you stole that right out of my mouth. I was going to say
just let me say this real quick. You have to follow the totality of their work and the trajectory that somebody's on.
Yes, and at the age that I always, in my experience, when a guy's going to be a guy, 16 years old.
I was just going to say,
16 years old. There's a multitude of reasons why. One is a lot of things happen when you're 16. You gain independence from driving, right? So you now become a guy that is, you'll got more distractions. Usually there's some females distractions as well, right? Yep. There's things going on from just a young male standpoint. And you start to see who is really physically mature as they start to come into their bodies, right? There may be late bloomers, but usually everybody's starting to at least have bloomed or starting to bloom by 16.
Right.
So when you're at that age, it becomes really obvious who those guys are. You can still hide at 14 and 15, and a guy might be a little old for the grade, or a guy might just be a little advanced, physically. But the gap closes around that sophomore year, and suddenly you start to see who's who.
Right. Now you don't have to be a finished product at that point, but you have to be able. I have to be able to see something, because if I can see, and I've seen it a lot, where somebody has something by that age, right? Yeah. They're not a finished product, but I can see what's possible, and that's really what I deal in is possibilities. What are the possibilities? And so, and it never usually fails. Like if somebody has that possibility, this is why you see guys who will come out of high school, go to smaller schools, and make it to the league, because it clicks. Yep. And everybody's different. Now you will see people who peak when they're a sophomore, and then you'll see people who don't start to click, like you said, sophomore year. By the time you're a senior, you're absolutely right. Now, if you have that potential, if you have that something there, and you work at it, you can maximize that to get that opportunity to play college football.
And I think working and being coachable can bridge a lot of that, right? It can really help you develop into something that you want to be. But again, just wanting to do it and saying and doing are two different things. Right. And so I think we live in this world, and I think it's really unfair to a lot of the athletes, because a lot of them think that they're on the right path by following what they see on Instagram and just social media, or what they perceive their friends are doing.
Yeah, or somebody's got them out at a park and they're telling them what they want to hear. This is why I really think Elite and what you do is so valuable, because not only can it tell you and help you become where you want to be or go to where you want, it can also save you time if you're not at that level you think you are, but you're at this level.
Yeah.
And you guys are very honest with everybody. You can maximize them to this point. I've never seen you or any of your staff blow smoke. You might have opinions of players. I know that I like to get opinions with your guys and tell them how wrong your guys are.
Yeah, but
that's still they have the kid's best interest at heart, and they're never trying to sell. They're never trying to blow smoke. They're never trying to build somebody up into what they're not. But there are people out there who do that.
I can tell you it happens every day. And one of the things I think we've prided ourselves on for years is, and you could look at it as maybe as inefficiency in our business. We've never had a salesperson like that. Like there's no one in the process other than the person at the front desk checking you in, checking you out. That's it. It is what it is. Like we're not, the coach is there to give you their opinion on where they are and where we can take them. But we're not there to blow smoke. And I think, unfortunately, when you get to it, we're at a pretty good scale, right? Because we see a lot of kids. More importantly, we've seen a lot of kids. I think that's the bigger thing. Like data in, it's hard to catch up to someone that has as much data and experience as we have because we've been doing it for so long. Like, for instance, the NFL playoff games, we were talking about those before we got on the air.
Yeah.
And right at the beginning, we turn the TV on, and those are kids that we've trained in our facility. Each team's got, a guy or two, if not three, on a team, and, that are on the team, right? And so it's pretty cool to see that environment. But at the same time, like, it's also, that's not why we do it, right? That's just a byproduct of what we've done. And so we don't guarantee anybody's going to go to the NFL if they walk into our facility. We don't guarantee you're going to be a starter, but I will guarantee you're going to be a better football player.
Right. And you really could do that. You really could have a wall of fame where you could just have all the pictures of all the guys.
We do have like a little video board when we turn it on. It's impressive.
Yeah, but I'm talking about, some people would just blow that up. You know what I mean? But you guys never do that. You guys never.
If your motive is to train kids, you train kids, right? If you enjoy training and getting and developing, then that's what you do, right? And I also say, like, if you see a bunch of people out there having to explain that they're a mentor and having to explain that how good they are, what they do, I would take a second look, because quite honestly, people that talk like that, any line of business, usually are not very secure in what they're doing, and they're trying to convince themselves. And do you want to be the guinea pig as they learn, or do you want to go somewhere where someone's already done it literally thousands of times? And like this weekend, for instance, I had a young man come in from Indianapolis. Okay.
Saw a guy from Texas the other day.
Yeah. We have people come in from around. We had a guy from Georgia. We have guys that come in. We've had them come in from Canada. We've had Australia, Mexico. We've had Germany. We've had kids from all over the world come in and train. And part of the lure is that they want to be around guys that have done it before. So I think, in my opinion, like, there's great places all over the country to go train, right? And we're associated with a lot of those guys. A lot of them train in our facility and then have done things other places. But on the flip side, like, you just have to be careful with what you're doing and how you're doing it, and assess, is this worth my time? Is this worth my money? And like, I had a text message before I got in here, and it was a guy that was looking at, wanting more advanced training for his middle schooler. But I also have to say, just because something seems advanced, you also have to pass all steps to get to where you want to go. There's no skipping steps. And I know sometimes things seem like they're moving slow.
Yeah.
But the end result is the end result, right?
Exactly. It's like jumping up in weight when you shouldn't. Right. Slow and steady wins the race. Some guys you'll see try to, they want to get to that, 400-pound bench, 300-pound bench, 200-pound bench in some cases. Mm-hmm. And so they want to try to skip that step, right? And that's just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah,
in most cases.
You just got to learn to take one step at a time, understand what it's all about, and ask questions, but also, like, be cognizant of where you really are in continuum of sport, because I think we live in a world where everybody wants to accelerate, because they think that's going to get them closer to their goal. Well, if you're in 7th or 8th grade, you're still in 7th or 8th grade. You're not going to be a Division I football player, even if you get an offer, a phantom offer at that age.
Yep.
You still can't go for 4 or 5 more years, right? So,
So what would you say to, well, I mean, you don't have to tell me what you said to this particular parent, but what would you say to somebody who has a middle school and like, we want advanced training?
I would say work on your skill. Work on your skill to the highest level you can at that age, right? Mm-hmm. Be consistent with it as often as you can do it, meaning 1-2 days a week, like nothing crazy, whether that's a private or a class. And then from a performance standpoint, 2 to 3 days a week where you're doing it consistently and just working on your movement. So like a typical class for us, they're going to work on mobility, like hip mobility, range of motion, activation, and then they jump into like a movement of the day. So that's like 30 minutes of mobility work and activation. Then they do 30 minutes of movement. So whether it's acceleration, deceleration, lateral quickness, explosiveness, and then they do 30 minutes of like a foundational strength, which is going to be like a lot of glutes, hamstrings, core, upper back, all things that support movement.
So there are some training techniques that you have that are just not fit for them physically.
Yeah,
at that point.
like we've talked about, we have our off-season lifting, which is our program that's proprietary algorithm that gives you what lift you need to do. And I would not do that. Like I have a 7th grade son, and he wants to do it, and he's not going to do it. Yeah, he could do basic stuff. He's doing basic stuff in classes. I don't want him doing lifting and start to do advanced level stuff while he's still growing. And everybody says, well, and there is a lot of, a disagreement about, lifting too early. I fall in the camp of, do it light at their age. Right. Which I think most people do.
Yeah.
And some kids are definitely more physically mature. I also am a big believer in, some of the things that lifting does produce at younger ages. Like it's hard to ignore, like there's androgenic effects of lifting. So which means it increases the hormones, estrogen and testosterone in the body, which estrogen is known to be a promoter of closing growth plates. So I've done the time, I've studied, I've read as much as I can about it. And we have guys on our staff that are pretty well educated. We've seen guys that look really good in middle school that kind of peak early. And a lot of times they're just bigger, stronger. Sometimes it's just because they're older. Sometimes it's just they are physically more mature and they're just earlier in their growth cycle. But, everybody is different. But there are certain things and landmarks that you want to get to. Now, if you are a kid that's already 6'3", 6'4" at that age, and growth and height is not a deal breaker, right? If you're a tight end, you're already 6'4",
right?
Have at it, man.
Exactly.
Have at it, because you're already big enough. But if you're
stunt your growth,
if you're a middle school running back that's 5 foot and you wants to get to 5'8", 5'9", and you're already kind of a little muscle, a little more muscle bound, you gotta be careful.
Right.
I mean, I've seen it. Believe me, I've seen it. And
I've seen it the other way too, where there's like a 6'3", 6'4" like defensive lineman, and people around him don't want him to lift because they're afraid that it will affect their overall athleticism.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's crazy.
Well, you got to do the right lifting, and I think we've gotten so far away from, the science has changed on lifting, right?
All the time.
Then we've gotten, football is kind of behind, in my opinion. You have doing a lot of things like double leg, like squats and heavy stuff, and still a lot of the Olympic lifts. I would say there's a lot of people that I am in agreement with that say, hey, more single leg, more explosiveness, more body control. There are times and places where you're doing, two-legged type activities, but when you're playing sports, most of the time you're on, you start on 2 and you're moving 1 foot at a time, right?
And technology is really breaking that down.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Science is just really, I was just watching something today, what the NFL uses, and they really break it down. You're absolutely right, to the one leg. And it just, they
have angles. They understand like what the loads are. So like, this is kind of a neat thing too. So we've talked about how we have these force plates that we utilize for our lifting as well as evaluating athletes. So in that, right. So like, let's just use a major university in the state of Missouri. So they can have kids come in like on Sunday, right after a weekend game, Saturday game, and they can jump on their force plates. And the force plates will then give them a readiness score. And a lot of it's like asymmetries. So you're like trying to pick up, is the right leg or left leg or the front or the back, of the body loading differently than it was last week, right? It's teasing out injuries, and inefficiencies in the body. So then based on that, then they know what kind of workload to give that athlete during the week, which I think is awesome, right? We utilize a thing in our facility for many years called Omega Wave. Omega Wave is a really unique, it's pretty expensive, but it reads your heart rate variability. It reads your the Omega Wave of the brain, which is the lowest frequency, I believe, which then kind of shows like where your brain is in the cycle of acquiring skill or learning. So what's really neat about it, you can scan and it will actually tell you what kind of workout you should do that day based off your brainwave. I would,
Interesting.
now if you're in a mass setting where you need to do a bunch of athletes, a force plate's way better because it's faster.
Right.
The Omega Wave system is going to take not long, but a longer time to acquire that information because you have to have everybody lay down for like a minute, and then they got to be calm, and then it reads their scale, it reads their brain. So I would, in a large scale environment, much easier to do a force plate, and you're doing it every week through the season and off season. But I think the technology is wicked. And one of the neat things about our facility is we have some really good connections, right? The guy that owns Omega Wave, know him quite well. He's come in and spoken to our staff numerous times. His name's Val Nasedkin, and he's a former Russian scientist. And
nice.
And he defected to the U.S. during the I think the '84 Olympics.
Yeah.
So he's been at the forefront of a lot of this stuff, and some of the stories that he's associated with, and he was helping the East Germans. I mean, some wild stuff back in the heyday of doing things they shouldn't have been doing.
Yeah.
And we can touch on some of those stories down the line, but there are some really crazy stories about doing things the wrong way. And we don't ever want to be associated with that because long term, it ends up hurting athletes, right?
Well, and their end goal was just to win.
Yeah.
They didn't care what happened to the athlete per se.
Well,
I would imagine.
Quick story. They used to win. The Russians would win every junior track event, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their sprinters were unbelievable, and they could never win when they got to the actual Olympics, right? And they started figuring out these people started dropping dead in their early 20s.
Yeah.
And they were doing things they shouldn't have been doing, right? This is in the 70s and 80s, and giving them things that were performance enhancing to the point where they were doing extremely well. So taking their body to the utmost limit, but eventually the body comes back and falls down and, comes back to a lower level than what you created.
Yeah, you pay
artificially.
For that. Oh, yeah.
And it ended up killing these poor people. And they had a large number. I don't forget the number, but it was, it killed the program because they realized,
literally,
oh my gosh, we are making a mistake. And, obviously that's really horrible. Someone lost their life over it, but that's the other thing. There's enough in nutrition and nutrition science, right, that we can help healthy athletes, and do things in good behaviors and learn. 2 weeks ago, we had a meeting with our 7-on-7 team out at the First Form headquarters in Fenton. They are a partner of ours at our facility. A lot of people don't know what they do. A lot of people do know what they do. They're a sports nutrition company, and they are really good. Their hometown. They produce protein and things of that nature, right? They have a bunch of different supplements, but for youth athletes, protein is a huge one because a lot of them are not getting enough of it in their diet, and then just solid multivitamins or things like that kids can be taking that are going to just kind of bridge the gap for what they're not eating, right? We all know school lunches are not the best, and there's ways to supplement your nutrition and learning from those. But so we had the First Form guys talk to our athletes about things that they can be doing, and I will say that the parents' eyes were peaked, were certainly perked up when the guy was talking about it, because it's one of those things that it's a gray area because everybody doesn't really know what they're putting in their bodies, what it is, and what the perceived benefit is, or what the drawback is.
Just grabbing a Pop-Tart for breakfast is not the way to go.
So working on that stuff is huge. Understanding and learning about that. We could probably have one of those guys come on one day and educate our audience on it, because I will tell you, I'm fairly good at some of that stuff, and I'm not saying I live it every day, but I learned a lot listening to them talk, because again, that's their expertise. You and I are experts in football, not necessarily nutrition, right? And
no,
that's where they come into play. And then having partners that understand what to do and how to do it makes a huge difference.
Right. Absolutely. So, I mean, it's fascinating, just the science that's becoming involved in football, just everything down to the, like you said, what you eat, what when to train, how to train. The one thing I would want to reiterate is, and it's something that I see a lot of, but I see a lot of guys just not necessarily taking advantage of those opportunities, like what you're saying here with the nutrition or with the training and that. And I would really implore both, the players and the parents to, make a plan, form a plan, like we said, what you want to do, what you want to become, and then to take advantage of the opportunities. And as far as taking advantage of opportunities, you have to make sure they're the right opportunities. So you need to research them and find the background, because there's opportunities and then there's good opportunities.
Yeah. There's so many opportunities, and if you choose,
some kids don't take advantage of the good opportunities, which really blows my mind.
Yeah, but
I don't know how you get through to that.
Well, I don't know how you get through to it at all, because the unfortunate truth is there is a lot of data out there, good and bad, and sometimes you choose to listen to people that maybe give you the answer you want versus the answer you need. And I think the unfortunate truth is a lot of those kids we're talking about don't figure it out to their it's too late.
Yeah,
it's too late. It's too late.
Yeah, absolutely.
So unfortunately, if you're in that world of trying to get better and wanting to develop, just doing what everybody else is doing is not going to get you where you want to go.
No.
So, but you look at a guy like, and I was going to put a picture up last week. I think we talked about it. Kyren Williams. Okay.
Oh.
He is a guy that worked his tail off. Was he the most athletic kid at every single event he went to? No. Was he the biggest?
Wasn't the fastest.
Wasn't the fastest, but he was a hell of a football player. But he put himself in position with where he went to school, with what he did. He led. He made that Vianney program. I mean, he took it, put it on his back, and won a couple of state titles.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a difference maker. Did the same thing in college, did extremely well in college. And now he's a second-year pro, and he's an all-pro, right? And so, I think I talked about this, but I sent a picture to Jared Cook, who I have a picture of those two training.
Yeah, I think we showed that last week.
Unless
you
said,
just showed that.
I don't know if we got it up on there, but
I don't know. Joe, did we show that last week? Do you remember?
I can't remember.
Picture of Jared Cook and Kyren Williams.
I don't think so. I don't remember.
Okay, then you must have just shown it to me.
Yeah, yourself. I think so. But It was one of those things that Jared actually got back to me. He's like, oh my God. He's like, it's crazy to think someone, that long ago was working for that. And now he's just getting it.
Yeah.
Back to the point. Everyone wants to accelerate things. How about you take advantage of each opportunity one day at a time? And then you never know. They're going to stack on top of each other and build, as you always say, and turn into a situation that is going to be really good for you.
Yes.
And unfortunately, if you think it's just going to be an accelerated process and you hit the button and you say, hey, I'm going to be a pro.
Yeah.
Well, you got to play in middle school first.
Yeah.
Then you got to play in high school. And you got to do well there. You got to go to college. You got to fight through a bunch of other guys that are just like you, get on the field and have things go your way. But I would argue they go your way when you work your butt off and you're prepared. Like it just doesn't happen by accident.
No. And if you say I'm going to be a pro, then that becomes daunting, right? It's a daunting task. Instead of just taking it one building block at a time, completed this step, check. Completed this, check. I'm building this.
So Josh Allen, there's a pretty famous video of him where he's like talking about like trying just to get recruited, right? And he's a guy that wants to play college football. Like, I want to play college football. And no one's taking a shot on him. Then he gets a shot, right? Wyoming. I don't think he had many other shots.
No.
And then, he's a guy, but he's not the guy coming out of college, right? But he gets selected. Now he's turned into, let's say one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But do you think that young man that's in that video just begging for offers, like someone to take a chance on him, is really worried about pro football at that time?
Right.
He's not worried about pro football. He's worried about one thing and one thing only: getting to go to the next level that will allow him to keep playing the game. And so I think that's what we got to really focus our audience on, is if you're a high school or middle school, enjoy where you're at, enjoy the process, have fun with it. You don't know what's going to come of it. Some things can happen. You can get injured. A lot of things that we cannot control happen, right? But on the flip side, when those things do happen, if you're really about it and it's not career ending, you can overcome it and move on to the next phase, right? I mean, that's the beauty of being a human. There's resiliency in everything we do if you decide to be resilient, right?
And the great thing about football is that that is your goal and you work towards it and you don't make it. Say you don't make it to the league or you don't, you're not all conference SEC.
Yep.
There's so many other opportunities in football, be it through coaching, be it through, front office, be it through part of the, support staff, doing what you do, doing what I do. That if you really want to live that dream of being in football and being a grown middle-aged man and still being surrounded with it and part of the game, that opportunity is there. So don't pigeonhole yourself on that. Use it as a means to an end.
So one of my longtime kids I trained, awesome kid, we've talked about his career. Actually, I think it was probably the worst set of circumstances I've seen with anybody, like as a football player, as far as like getting offers, coach gets fired, having a SEC's come in on signing day, team trying to get him, and he's already committed to another and signed with another school. Dalton Demos, quarterback at CBC.
Heck of an athlete.
Oh, phenomenal athlete. And so he still trains some kids with us at our facility, but he was in the medical field and doing really well, like doing surgical sales, and transitioned as after college, and he played a little professionally over in Germany just for fun, kind of having a one last time.
He came and coached with Boom for a minute.
Yeah. He's done all that, and so he was doing the medical sales, but he had a drawback to sports, so he got involved in. This is pretty cool. He got involved with like championship rings. Okay. And so a guy he played with in college has a family-owned business, and they sell rings, championship rings for all sports, but a lot of football ones.
Yeah.
And he got involved in that and did extremely well in that, and is growing it. So last night he's in my office, and he was training a kid. He's like, hey, he was talking to a coach about some rings, so he goes out to his car and brings in. It was a gun case as big as this table. Super wide. Probably, I don't know, 6 feet, 5 feet, whatever it is, big. And it had rings. Ring after ring after ring.
Really?
And so I'm holding all these things, and all the coaches are looking at them, and these players are looking at them. And he's done like some really good ones. So like he's talking, I think locally, and they're dealing with Michigan. Like big time national championship rings, high quality work, right?
Yeah.
And I hold up, a couple of these rings, and I'm like, look, this is what a lot of people are just playing for this, because it's a sign of all the hard work and all the stuff you put up with in the process. And when you finally are on a championship level team and you earn a conference championship or a national championship or whatever it might be, a bowl championship, and you get that piece of metal, it's not just a ring. It represents so much about what you've bought into,
work you've put in,
and the work you've put in, and all the people that doubted you, all that stuff. It all comes and culminates into that. Obviously, a Super Bowl ring is probably the culmination of every single bit of that, but a college national football title is pretty darn close. But yeah, so you look at that, and you see like a guy like Dalton staying connected to the game, right, and getting to be involved at that level, right? But he brings to that level dedication, hard work, all those things he learned as a player. He's getting up this first thing this morning, drove to Columbia. he in the bad weather. He trained last night in it, and then came home, and then got up, went to Columbia, right? So he's a guy that's a success story. He's not in the NFL. He's not a guy that's played he's played at the high levels,
right?
But he is staying in the game, and he's bettering the game by being involved in it too. So to your point, you don't know where it's going to take you. At some point, you got to retire from football.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? At some point, it's over. So if you want to stay involved in the game, coaching at a place like ours, going and being a college coach is huge. That's another career path. Or scouting, being a referee.
Although that's full. Don't
Yeah.
that's full right
It's
now.
full.
So quit it.
Well,
Quit.
you got to learn.
No,
You
do
gotta
have
learn how
to. You have
do
to
it.
learn, and I mean, I'm always open for people
Yeah.
to, there's jobs out there available for people that are looking to do it. And something you said, you were talking about Dalton and his following about his coaching situation in college.
Yep.
I see something that happens. I know Mizzou just had a player who was in the transfer portal who committed to Mizzou, a defensive lineman from Alabama, and now he's gone. He's already re-entered the portal and is going to be leaving. And I believe it's because Coach Peoples, who had been recruiting him, decided that he was going to go to LSU with Coach Baker, who became LSU's defensive coordinator. I see too many kids following coaches. I see too many kids committing to schools because of a coach. And that's just a bad reason to pick a school. You need the totality of everything with the school, but there's got to be something more than just going there because of a coach. In fact, because of the coach should be the last thing. That should be the final piece of the puzzle, because coaches leave. And we talked about it last week, how, I'm not a huge fan of the portal, but it levels the playing field in instances like this.
Yeah.
And so you need to make a checklist of reasons for a school, but just going here because this coach is usually a bad idea for exactly the reason.
Well, yeah, just look at
them leaving.
Look at the musical chairs going on. I mean, you have Nick Saban,
crazy.
and you can't fault the guy for retiring, right? But that
Jim Harbaugh might there's
right.
a good chance he's going to go to San Diego.
And now you got Washington. You coach Kalen DeBoer transferred. He's now over at Alabama, right? Yeah. So then that creates a whole new issue at Washington. And what's interesting is like Eric Schmidt, who used to be at SIU, guy I know, he was at Washington. He was an edge rusher and special teams. They announced he was going to be the new defensive coordinator at San Diego State on the 23rd, thereabouts. So right before the national title game. I think he's going to Alabama. So now
really
San Diego State's got to find a new DC, right? And so, a lot of things, there's a lot of moving parts. So but that's also a good thing. So because if you meet coaches, like I've always said, make great relationship with as many coaches as you can, because you never know where they're going to be. That guy might be recruiting you as an NAIA guy, or you meet him at the Lindenwood camp, and he's an NAIA guy. Next thing you know, he's at a FCS school. Next thing you know, he's at FBS school.
See, it happen all the time.
It happens all the time.
And they recruit up.
Yes, they do.
If they had a relationship with you when they were at this lower level school, when they go to that next school, guess what? They know you. They're going to, tell the coach that they're working for. They're going to take a look at you, and boom.
So, the other thing is too, like there's guys in my facility, coaches in our facility that will be coaching college football. I mean, we have 15, 20 guys coaching FBS football right now that have come through our program. And I think, meeting and knowing these guys as they're cutting their teeth as young coaches, like we pride ourselves in those guys going to be college coaches. We had Ronell Perkins is a great example. He's a guy that was coaching in our facility for a couple of years as he transitioned out of football. He kind of caught a bad deal with COVID going into the NFL. His brother plays in the NFL, but he's now at UNLV.
Is that right?
Yeah. So he was coaching at our facility. He got a GA job. Now he's there coaching. And so you look at it and you go, okay, you got another guy, Jack Taylor, who was a Lafayette guy. Yeah. He was down at South Florida. He was an analyst and just got promoted to tight ends coach. I mean, so like
it's so wild.
You never know who you're talking to and what their connection is. And, oh, by the way, someone like ourselves, we have good connections to those guys because we have a relationship. They came up in our system, and now they're in college, they're coaching, and they will call and they'll ask. I mean, they'll say, hey, who do you have?
Yeah.
Or what do you know about this kid? Right. And that could be a guy at Auburn. It could be a guy at Troy University. It could be a guy at Tennessee. It could be a variety of schools that you just never know who's who.
You never know. And it's so funny how it comes full circle is I remember Ronell, I'm the first one who really scouted him when he was at University City. He was like a sophomore, and I pegged him, identified him as a future D1 prospect.
Yep.
And that's where I first met Ronnie. His brother played at Oklahoma, playing in the NFL. And that's one of the cool things about what I do is meeting these guys when they are just starting, when they're making that move, that I'm able to identify it. And the list is long. The Sheldon Richardsons, the Drew Locks, the Blaine Gabberts, Monty Ball, all these guys, and you get to see them, and you get to see that development and what comes. So that's great for Ronell that he's out there.
Yeah, that's a
Coach
great
Odom
place
has
to
just
be.
really got a nice local flavor to his.
And that's why part of the reason I think you're seeing a lot of St. Louis kids get offered there.
Missouri kids.
Yeah.
I mean, Coach Odom got 2 great kids out of Kansas City, Kansas City. Not North Kansas City, Liberty North. No offense to everybody over there.
But awesome. I mean, and what a cool place to go. You get to play in Allegiant Stadium where the Raiders play.
Oh,
I mean, it's a unique place.
Great.
They have great facilities. I mean, if you want to go for, that's the interesting thing. We always say stay closer to home, right? But if you have connections to people, okay. For instance, with the Alabama coaching change, there's going to be a St. Louis flavor at Alabama now. Coach William Inge, is a Kirkwood graduate.
Yeah.
He was at Washington.
Yep.
He's now going to be there. Coach Eric Schmidt recruited St. Louis for a long time. He's going to be there. And there's a lot of people that know, and Coach DeBoer, he was at SIU. I probably, 10, 12 guys that we've coached played for him at SIU, and everybody speaks volume, cannot speak
highly
any better than they do about him. Right. And it's probably not a secret to why he wins. And I believe, I could be wrong, but I think Coach Stugart at Lindenwood followed DeBoer at Sioux Falls. So I think, he won a bunch of national titles, and then they had 20-something winning, 20-plus, winning seasons.
Coach DeBoer is really, you want to talk about somebody that's gone from, this level up just through the stratosphere, the highest that you can get in college football at Alabama. It's him. When you look at his resume, like you said, where he started and what he's made himself to, he's really
a winner.
amazing.
And what's unique about it too is he didn't come from like the good old boy club,
not at all
lineage. Like he is cut
self-made, 100%.
He is cut from a different cloth.
Yep.
And a lot of these guys you see, like they come out of certain trees of coaches. Like, this guy they all started from one main guy, and then they all fanned out. I mean, Saban's a great example.
Yep.
A bunch of those guys that are coaching college football came out of his system. DeBoer did not come out of any particular system. He was just a winner at NAIA level. And then he was a high level national championship coach. And then he basically went to FCS level, and kind of, stepped down, so to speak, as a position coach. And, he was running a program, and then he was working with guys and as an assistant, and people loved him at that. And then he got a coordinator role, did well with that, and then goes to Fresno State for a year or two, and then bam.
Love to see it.
It's awesome.
You know whose name I actually heard a long list of names for the Washington job was Barry Odom.
I could see that.
A guy who, I absolutely could see that as well. So we'll see what happens with that.
It's interesting, right? I mean, but back to your point of like, you don't know what you like if you're just following coaches, sure, I guess it's easier now than ever because you can just go with them in the transfer portal. But just because you're a fit at UNLV doesn't mean you're going to be a fit at Washington.
Right. Or Will Rogers, who's following DeBoer to Alabama.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting. I don't know about that. It's like, okay, good luck.
Yeah. I mean, he was at Mississippi State, now to Alabama.
Yeah.
And he's a good quarterback.
He is.
But you
got to have the right fit. Right. And that's something we can talk about on the next show as time's winding down here.
Yeah.
What's going on with Elite this week? I know you had another huge group of guys on Sunday.
Yeah, we tell you what, we had a large group of kids in a Sunday. We have a youth group at 11. We have a high school at 12:30. 2 o'clock we do middle school. Then we have an extra high school group at 3:30. And those go every Sunday from now all the way through October. And it's one of those things that's really neat. If you want to try it, the first session's free. There's no strings attached. You can just come in and just wear athletic clothing, tennis shoes, tell them you're there to do a trial class. They sign you up. It's as simple as that.
There you go. And I get the question I get a lot is when do Wednesdays start?
Wednesdays start February 21st. So like middle of February, or towards the end of February. We let the spring sports get out, and then we have a little bit more room, time, and space. and get those guys rolling. And Wednesday nights are a ton of fun. I love those because it's got a different flavor to
It's
it
happening,
usually.
yeah.
And then the other thing is we just sent out another reminder starting to fill up the combine. So March 9th,
Yep.
Saturday,
Where do
March
people
9th,
go? Where do people go for that?
EliteFootballCombine.com. Definitely that will start to fill up. If you're not on the list when we close it down, there's not much we can do.
The premier high school football combine in the Midwest. So anyway, that'll do it for us now. A lot of stuff we didn't get to. We'll make sure that we mark it down to get to it next week. But
Plenty of stuff.
Plenty of stuff going on. Football is a year-round sport. This is the fastest hour of football talk on the planet. Football 360 Show. You can reach us at Football 360 Show on Twitter and Instagram. Matt, they can reach you at
Elite Football Academy on Instagram and Elite Football on Twitter.
All right. JP Rock MO on Twitter and JP Rock Scout You on Instagram. That'll do it for us, and we will see you next time. Stay safe. Drive safely out there. Slow it down.